Hey everyone, my name's Carl Leduc. I'm having a conversation today with Rick Pearce, who's the CEO and CCO of FENIX Studios, a studio based in Australia. But Rick's got some roots from New Zealand, and I'm going to be talking to him about his upcoming project Office Fight and just some advice and his perspective on the games industry, game development, and how his journey has been so far. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the podcast. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Rick, for having a chat with me. I'm really curious to hear about FENIX Studios, what you guys are building, Office Fight, and just starting an indie studio, going through the hoops to get that underway, getting the marketing done for your game, getting ready for launch. It's not a small feat, and I'd just love to unpack, I guess, how that journey's been so far, what you expect the future to be like for the launch and beyond. So I guess just as a first question at a high level, I'd love to know why you decided to start a game studio because I believe you've got some experience in virtual production previously. Why did you choose to make an indie game?
Yeah, I guess it stems back to about 2016. I wanted to get into VR development. My background's in film and animation, and I wanted to get into VR development so you could experience films or engage with them a little bit sort of deeper, and tell really cool stories. I've always been a gamer, but I never really thought at that stage we would sort of pivot to making games eventually. So we went down this path of learning Unreal, real time nature, the real time development and virtual production, and then our studio Spectre Studios got acquired by a larger studio, and we got pivoted to make a game title, which was not outside of the realms of the capabilities we had, but it really forced us to go through like a development process on a more richer level. Before that, we'd published VR titles, we'd done a lot of VR training, we did a lot of virtual production on big films, so we're used to you know very massive scope ideas, whittling them down into a production timeline, and then how to deliver. So that whole process of taking an idea and then the craftsmanship and planning to deliver, that was something that we'd already been doing for a long time. So when the decision to start FENIX really was kind of handed to me. This time last year, me and my crew, after being acquired, we got made redundant. So that just became a story that we heard quite a lot of last year. But in April, we didn't think that was going to happen twice. So me and a crew of 10, we all got let go. And these people, the guys I work with, the crew, I've been with them for about 6 or 7 years now. So they're like family, and we thought, well, we've done a lot of work together. We've tried to build something else for somebody. We've tried to build crazy ideas for other people. What about if we would just have a crack at doing something ourselves? So we sat down. We're like, let's just make a game, something really, really, um, you know, uh, kind of low key in a way that we knew what we were going to tackle. We didn't think of tackling something like as complicated as an RPG or anything that had too many complicated combat systems. So we just started toying around with what's a cathartic way to release what we just went through, but in a gameplay. And then Office Fight became one of those things that became just as a natural progression. Um, you know, we took our own story, which is like, what would you do if you got made redundant, and given the opportunity to go back into the workforce and smash the place up, all with the idea of like bringing that employer down. Um, so we took the thread of that, and we're like, well, I feel like there's a lot of other people that would also sort of understand what that feels like, outside of it just being, a quirky a ragdoll physics game. We thought maybe weaving some of our own personal story into the idea might resonate with other people. And we picked the office and corporate world because that, to our minds, that's where a lot of these studios and a lot of these organizations tend up going towards, and they become like these inorganic structures. So we thought we might as well make fun of it. We'll make fun of our own demise and what happened to us, and then just push forward into developing a game about it. The tricky part was like with every project, a scope creep. So we had to give ourselves some really rigid guidelines as the guardrails as to what we do and don't want to be able to do in the game, and what kind of development time we want to stick to. So, having worked on heaps of other projects before, we knew that okay, for us to be able to get a POC together, we need 6 weeks. Okay, after the POC, we'll assess if it's worth it to keep pushing forward, and then after that point, we'll push to a beta, get some of the core logic down, and the game loop. So we had these like ideas at the beginning of starting it, of our process, while starting the studio. The studio really, for funding wise, we just decided to self fund it. I had no real option. We had no real time to raise capital, go out to the market, look for money. So yeah, we just self-funded the whole team. And I said to them, look, we have about 3 months. We have 6 weeks to build a POC, and if we're all happy with that, then we'll double down, see where we can get to in 3 months, and we'll pick up service work as we go. And then the service work will help keep paying for our development. So that was the goal. It was a kind of organic thing, and the team really trusted me. I was passionate about not being putting ourselves in a position again where we're at the mercy of somebody else's making decisions for us, a CEO or a group of investors, or a market. So we just figured we might as well back ourselves, and we'll just go for it. And that sort of snowballed us down this pathway where at some point we just decided we're fully fledged, devoted to making this game, and we're going to pull out all the stops to do it. Traditionally our workflow and our work was really kind of cinematic and filmic, and we do a lot of virtual production, so photorealistic environments and characters and stuff. So this a step towards a real low poly, zombie looking muted palette space was a really kind of like sidestep for our design team, and what we're used to. And me being a filmmaker and an ex-cinematographer, it was a break in the norm of how to express, character and design and a weird kind of game loop. So we all got to take the benefit of our game development and VR development and push it into this new funnel of, well, what do we like to do? What if we were to make a game? What would we like? And of the current skills we have, what can we use to be able to make something that's a bit more meaningful for us? And we just quickly realized, pretty pictures and 4K resolutions weren't part of the picture for us to make that product that we wanted. And then the more we got into the development, the more we realized, well, there's actually quite a lot of things around the gameplay and the game loop that are a sidestep from what we'd been working in film, and we liked it. We actually really liked it. It was there's this natural progression of, when we sit down and talk about the ideas for the game, the whole rules around what's too much and what's not too much was be as ridiculous as we can first, and if we're not offending anyone, then that's good. If we are offending somebody, then that's probably good as well. There's some humor in it. We just want it to be as ridiculous as possible, so people know we're not to take it too seriously. And we knew for ourselves that that's our goal. If we can get a chuckle, if there's a moment of like, I can't believe this is a game. Why didn't anyone think about this before? This is so silly. Those things were like, as long as we push into that kind of narrative, then we're doing our job. And it's just, and because it's such a departure from our previous, very serious filmic and commercial tone, it became more fun. So everybody got to really enjoy the process, and to the point where there's probably too much laughter in the studio a lot of the times with some of the random things that would that happen. But that's the beautiful thing about making a physics game, is that there are so many things that are unpredictable and part of the process that they just become features, and then that journey of discovery makes that process better, and then ends up making the product better. So our journey from being laid off actually fueled us to impart all this energy and all these crazy ideas into something that we probably in our world probably wouldn't have approached. We wouldn't have maybe gone down this path. So I think by being made redundant allowed us to sort of set free and like take risks that I don't think other studios probably could.
Yeah, no, I love it. Even set free, even from the perspective of your studio is called Phoenix Studios. It's like that, that being laid off is really the identity of the studio and what's motivating you to create Office Fight. I love that you also have mentioned, when you're making a game, it's all about making it fun for the end user, but it's awesome to hear that, the developers and your team are having fun creating it. And that just sounds like the right atmosphere to be making games in. So yeah, thanks for sharing that journey. You answered a bunch of the questions that I wanted to hear about. So I guess being so I know you have roots in New Zealand and being a Kiwi yourself. I'd love to know what your advice is for any Kiwi developers or people that could be in the film industry looking to pivot to games or just wanting to be creative with games in their career. What advice would you give them to pursuing those dreams? Because it sounds like your situation, it kind of happened and you went with the flow and you saw an opportunity. How could you apply that same feeling that you went through to someone studying or someone that's currently in one industry and wants to go to another? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, so Phoenix is a very kind of mature version of what the company that it started in 2016 was. To Spectre. Spectre Studios was my jumping off point from changing from one industry to another. So when I got over to Australia, I'm from Rangiora and just outside of Christchurch. So when I got over to Australia, I um I got a job at Walt Disney Animation and I worked there. That was my dream. I was like, oh, this is the best job in my life. Was getting paid like $300 a week, so it's terrible, terrible pay. But you're there because this is your dream, and if you don't have that job, there's 300 people that would willingly take your place, and that kind of like structure. But during the whole process of working in this big factory of production actually gave me insight to how you take an idea and squeeze it through this pipe and all the many variables that happen along the way and pivots and all that sort of stuff to story to be able to get the idea to screen. So with that knowledge, I was like, well, how can I apply this to other things? And then I retrained myself as a cinematographer. So I've changed industries a few times. I've retrained as a cinematographer, worked in films and television, all with the idea that eventually I wanted to make a film, my own film. Throughout that process, I realized actually what I really wanted to do is just tell stories and telling stories in different mediums. So then, so I was like, what story do I want to tell, and what tools do I know? And then I just married up. Well, I don't know how to do sound, so I learned how to do sound, and I don't know how to do lighting, so I studied lighting, and then I systematically broke down what I wanted to do in the future, and I just figured, well, I'm I'm not going to be able to get anyone else to do this with me. So what can I learn actively um, by myself? And this is before YouTube became like quite a really good place to learn. So I just volunteered on shoots and film sets and all that sort of stuff until I acquired just enough knowledge where I would feel comfortable if one day I was to shoot a feature film or direct one, that I knew what everyone's role was and what it meant to be part of this big organization or the structure and to deliver a film. So that systematic approach, when I shifted from film and television into game design, I started again. I thought, well, I know what I want to tell stories. What don't I know that's important to try to tell that story? Well, I downloaded Unity first. I played around with it, and I was like, well, I'm not a game developer, but there's things in here that are similar to 3D design, which I'm used to. And I just try to tell stories within the tools that I knew. And then my kind of knowledge started to expand. And then I found Unreal Engine, and then I jumped across, and then I took the same approach. And look, well, this engine is so huge, and it can do so many things. What are the things that I want to do, and how do I work backwards from trying to achieve that thing? And then on the journey, you realize I had met so many other people that are interested in doing something similar, but they had strengths in areas that I didn't have, and it became like this really kind of organic journey where it wasn't a commercial arrangement. No one was really making money, but we're all on this other purpose. We're like, we're tired of doing what we're doing. There's a natural, ceiling to certain job roles and types. And I picked that, my trajectory in Australia as a cinematographer, I'd have to wait 30 years before I could get a really good job because there's so many cinematographers. But I know that in the core was telling stories and having some kind of immersive fun. So then Unreal Engine just became my playground, and I experimented. I would just spend days and nights just making dumb and weird things, and each time I did that, I'd learn a little bit. And that progressive learning, when I look back on say 15 years of just intently trying to find something, learn it, add it to the repertoire, there are skills that you can translate quite well as you sort of develop yourself from a cinematographer's point of view. Lighting, camera, framing, story, intent are all still game language. So it's still storytelling, but just in a different medium. So once you learn the tools, you can still bring in that passion for whatever you had into the new medium. So think of us to truncate it down, like understanding what your passion is about whatever industry you're going to work in, especially in games, and then just wonder, like, if you were to work backwards from the thing that you want to do, what are some skills you already have that's transferable, and start there, and then start telling stories, or if it's developing mini games or whatever it is, or little functions. But I feel like that's, having that kind of like, flagpole in the distance of like, oh, this is what I want to eventually get to. It helps you build, the kind of inventory that you'll need to be able to get there. Ultimately, though, you never get to the flagpole. You always end, the journey is always different. But what's useful is that at least at some point there was enough energy put towards the goal that you've acquired the things you needed to know, and that's one of the things that I'd say is just be super curious, and like learn as much as you can, because I mean, even today I'm 43 and I learn something new every day about what we're doing, and that influences decisions I make as we sort of evolve with what we're doing with the game and the studio.
Yeah, awesome. I yeah, I love that. The skills portion I think is really important for people to understand, and then the storytelling side from the passion, because the passion for storytelling is probably what motivated you to create all those experimental projects to pick up those skills. And also the storytelling part when it came to developing Office Fight, it was probably a shared story that everyone could align with, that you could all, it was very clear, what the who the protagonist and the antagonist is, and like what is the outcome, and that's probably really important as well, to have a clear story at the very beginning of development. Just going into a bit more detail of Office Fight, yeah, I think you mentioned 3 months development to get it out. Do you have a planned release date, or what's your kind of development plan look like from today? Because I've loved your marketing content. I see you've got a beta out that's on Steam. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but what's that development plan look like to release?
Yeah, so we started development last year in May or April, and we did a POC in 3 months, and then from there we pushed forward towards a beta in October, and then we're at the point now where I think we're 80% complete with the game. We plan to do a soft launch in Tokyo in the Game Summit in March, March 2nd, which the game will be done by then, but we're, just nothing's ever finished, right? Even if it's finished, it's still there's all these things we want to fix and tweak. So now, part of what we're doing right now is that we revamped the boss mechanics in the game. I mean, the game itself is really just a casual 2 to 3 minute go at a time type thing. You can burn through a couple of levels. There's heaps of floors. We decided to add boss fights at the end of each floor, which complicated things and sort of like stretched out the timeline for our development. But we thought it was important because the way that the game is structured is, you get fired or made redundant from this megacorp, and this megacorp We kind of like mirrored it off a like a 10-story building. Each story is a department, and those departments relate to corporations like this marketing, IT, security, and all that sort of stuff. As we were looking at this building structure, we're like, this is really similar to Dante's Inferno. So what we did is we took that as a guide, and we attributed flaws to Dante's Inferno. There's gluttony, there's greed, and lust, and all that sort of stuff. And we attributed those things to departments. So lust is marketing, and greed is sales. And so once we had the story of revenge, or of being made redundant, we dug deeper into the story of why you want to be able to go through and complete the game, and then we dug deeper into the story of the system in which binds you as a zombie to the corporate world, and why it's important to break free. So it's still a fun, casual game, but we tried very hard to weave in these very real human questions we have about like our indented servitude towards our work and corporations that we might serve. All tongue in cheek, though. Obviously, don't want to upset all the Microsofts and the Googles in the world, but we're definitely going to take pot shots at companies like that. And when you spoke about the marketing, that's exactly how we're going to do it. So we feel right now there's a zeitgeist out there at the moment, and there's this feelings around big corporations making record profits, but doing mass layoffs. And in the face of what we experience, we feel like there's other ways to do things, and profit and bottom line should never just be the driving goal. Not when we're all people, and we all have families, and we have jobs, and we have livelihoods. It's easy for people to be counted as burn rate versus actual people. So in the game, the team, they just put their own flavor into it around their kind of not disdain towards the structure, but observations of corporate speak, and office politics and stuff like that. So it was a chance to sort of like to vent some of those frustrations. But for us, the game is really just an example of what when you're motivated, how you can truncate what should be quite a long development period into small time, because we have a shared experience of being made redundant, but a shared experience of what we would like to tell as a story that's connected to like how to get revenge in the most simple and non-aggressive way, even though it's fully aggressive game, but it's not really attacking anyone. It's still just tongue in cheek. So that's the essence of the game. Really, is we just wanted people to have an outlet, and also poke fun at our current systems. Not that it can change anything. It's going to be that way for a long time, but it was a fun sort of outlet for us to at least have a shared experience with everyone else who's going through that.
Totally. Yeah, I have a question which I love to ask anyone in the industry as I talk to them is, do you think that games are a form of art? What's your answer to that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel, yeah, the art and craftsmanship for sure. I mean, I didn't know anything about programming or development before I started working in Unreal Engine. And Matt, my lead developer, he when we met, I was like, wow, this guy, he's like super smart, loves math. I didn't really see the art in math at all, or logic and stuff like that. I loved and appreciated it, but there are times where he would do things that was literally craftsmanship, and very artistic, to the point where he would never say that he's an artist, but the stuff he does is true art. And then when you take a story and characters and then design, you push all those things together, and then you're having this wonderful, weird, wacky experience, whether it's our game or other games. There's no other thing that does it to you apart from the arts. Music does it, film does it. So, in my honest opinion, I feel like that's the perfect combination of tech, art, and engagement. With games. I know that when Ghost of Tsushima came out, I spent way too much time playing that just cruising around in the countryside, not even doing the actual missions, because I was really just aesthetically, you know, amazed at how beautiful and serene the game was. Its music and the design all sort of put together. So yeah, wholeheartedly, it's definitely art.
Yeah, I think it plays to immersion and like the power of games to be immersed in an environment. And once you're immersed, then you're really at the mercy of every detail that was developed for you. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 is another example with the even just like the footprints or the dialogue and every little scene can be can affect you emotionally and have an impact, which yeah, I believe is art as well. Um, yeah, cool. A completely different angle of a question is how big is your team? How big is Phoenix?
Yeah, so I think there's only 9 of us. I think I said 10 before, but I counting. We have a pet sloth. It's not really a sloth. It's not really a pet. It's like just a stuffed one we call Steven. He's like there just hanging out. And we've just onboarded a couple more guys. But we originally started off as 9. But yeah, we're probably up to 10 or 11.
Yeah, nice. Well, I hope you don't make your sloth redundant anytime soon. He's he's
No, no,
probably he's
he
probably got a
can't.
family as well.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. He's so slow moving. Even if we did fire him, he never could leave. He's doesn't he
Yeah, totally.
moves too slow.
Yeah, well, thanks for all the questions that you've answered. I've had a great insight into just your mind as a creative and just your projects in general. One question, last question that I have is what's been the hardest part of development so far? So over the last 9 months, what comes to mind as the biggest challenge that maybe you won't have to encounter with your next project, maybe you will, and you're dreading it, but what would you say the hardest part has been?
Yeah, I think I mean there's like I guess it's twofold, right? There's always a pressure when you're in a company or a business that at some point you can commercially be self-sustaining. That's always in the back of the mind around um, you know can, can this do well enough that the studio can keep alive? That's the commercial part of it. But then the artist part of it, where it's the imposter syndrome component, where you know you, as artists we tend to seek validation with what we do with our peers, our loved ones. So when you make something and then you kind of share it, you're vulnerable in a way that you even though you pretend you don't care what people think, you really really still do. So and that sometimes stops people from starting things, but from our point of view, we've spent time and energy and love into making something. You kind of like as an imposter syndrome, you think, oh, in that mindset, you're worried that no one will like it, or you're worried that somehow you faked your way to the point where when you release it, everyone will see it for what it is, or this weird, silly thing. Maybe you shouldn't even try game development. So eh, I think when you battle that as an artist, as a studio, there's always that self doubt about will people like it, and will it be accepted? But I think the only way that we sort of get through that is as a team, we all kind of really care about each other, and we can only really do our best, and the fact that we kind of do our best in a team, then whatever we make at the end of the process, and if we've all cared about that thing, we can take solace in the fact that you know uh, even if no one likes it, we kind of like enjoy the process, and we kind of enjoyed each other, and it became a vehicle for us to stay together, to delivery. So that's probably those are the two things, right? So the commercial component, and is this good enough? And but the answer to that is like it really doesn't matter. We love it, and it's quirky, and it's not going to be our last. And it's just a stepping stone to the future for us. And as long as we got to stay together, it was part of our story.
I love it, man. You do a great job at like articulating these internal conflicts that a lot of developers have, and I really appreciate you just being honest and open And yeah, just it sounds like you got a good head on your shoulders. I wish you and the Phoenix Studios team all the best with your showcases at conferences and at indie showcases this year, and look forward to picking up Office Fight when it's out. I'll check out the beta in the meantime though, and yeah, if anyone listening is
I'll
interested,
send you a proper demo build.
yeah,
The,
no,
the beta's like, it's stuck in time. You're like, oh, I wish you can undo that. But I'll send you something a bit more recent. Yeah,
yeah, no worries. I'll add some links to your pages if anyone listening wants to go follow and check it out. Keep up the good work. Thanks for sharing your advice, and yeah, looking forward to seeing how your journey evolves.
wicked. Thanks very much, mate. Take care.